All right, so maybe we should just get started. Yeah, it's about time, and we have about an hour and a half with y'all. So as people come in, then we can just, oh, beautiful teapot. Love it. Um, Great. Well, thank you for coming, everyone, so far. And as more
Hey.
people come on, they'll see. Um, this is, sorry, what?
Oh,
Oh,
nothing.
um, Welcome to the very first episode of On the Fire Escape. I'm your host, Kevin Clark, and I wanted to thank you all so far for coming as we try out this new platform. We're joined today by Caleb Teicher and Mike Esperanza. Caleb is a dancer, choreographer, and company owner. He's the recipient of 2 Bessie Awards, the New York City Center Choreographic Fellowship, a Harkness Promise Award, and 2019 NEFA National Dance Project Production Grant. It's a mouthful. He and his company have shown work at the Joyce Theater, New York City Center, the Guggenheim Museum, Jacob's Pillow Dance Festival, Lincoln Center Out of Doors, in collaboration with Regina Spektor on Broadway and Ben Folds at the Kennedy Center. His latest collaborations include Bzzz with world champion beatboxer Chris Solis and More Forever with composer-pianist Conrad Tao, and with his company Caleb Teicher and Co. Mike Esperanza is a man of many talents, choreographer and director of dance company. He did designer making works for Columbia TriStar, Sony, Telemundo, Nissan, Colgate Company, the Irvine Company, Fashion Island, and Santana Row, a filmmaker and a photographer. Within the dance world, Mike has presented on stages such as the John F. Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts, the Surgistrom Center for the Arts, McCallum Theater, Alvin Ailey Dance Theater, Salvatore Capizio Dance Theater at Perry Dance, the Royal Conservatory in Cordoba, Spain, and the Australian Circus Festival, and has created and set works all across the US. He is a recipient of the Dance Creation for Performance Grant by Dance USA and the Irvine Foundation, the 2010 Interstate Tour presented by ODC Theater, a 2010 award by Palm Desert Choreography under the Stars Festival, a 2014 Reverb Dance Festival Commission Award, and the 2014 CUNY Grant Dance Initiative, among others. His latest project, Solstice, is a coordinated performance between New York and California, using both live performance and live broadcasts, set to premiere in October. Thank you both for coming, and I'm glad you're both here. So now that we've done the introduction to like who you guys are, we're just going to go ahead. Before we do anything any further, I think it will be really helpful to turn down your speaker volume on your computer just a little bit, just to make sure that the voice, the sound that comes out of your computer isn't picked up by your own mic, so we don't get like a little bit of that weird feedback. Just a touch. Great. So let's start off with just how you guys are doing. It's a really crazy time right now. There's a lot of struggle in making work. There's a lot of struggle in like questions about what's going to happen later on down the road. And especially with performances being canceled, opportunities for residencies, the ability just to get into a studio and rehearse. How are you guys feeling? What are some of the things that are frustrating you? How are you feeling about the future? How are you feeling about now? What are some of the things that you're maybe enjoying about having this time to sit and wait? And what are some things that are really not great for you right now? Why don't, Mike, do you want to head this one up first?
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, for sure.
Sure. I think for me, there's like a little bit of a lag as far as progressing during this period of time. And certainly there's a lot of things, there weren't a lot of projects like slated to happen in these next couple of months. So a lot of these, like from now to like June, was really supposed to be a lot of preparation time for me for October and July. We have a show in July for LaGuardia Performing Arts Center, so that's still pretty uncertain as far as what they want to do, and they're kind of again, like everybody's trying to figure out what's going to happen, and so they're in the same boat, so they can't really give us like a complete answer to that. And so I'm really looking forward to more like the long-term kind of goals. And
Yeah.
so for me, I'm using this time to kind of really organize certain things so that when we get back into the fix, it really feels like we still have progressed from a certain point, and not
Yeah.
necessarily lulling in this like kind of period of uncertainty. So it's a lot of prep time for me. So because I'm handling 18 dancers between New York and California,
A lot.
and so it's a lot of work. And so if I can get myself in that situation where I could be more organized and more prepared, the time when we get together is when the time is to really crank things out. I think this time for me has been really nice because I've been by myself, and so I feel pretty creative in my own personal space. So I've been creating a lot of stuff like just for me, like digitally and like kind of just artistically, and like certain things for graphics and for movies or for video. So I'm utilizing this time to kind of just like kind of even catch up for editing, for photography, for film, and like a lot of that stuff. So I'm staying pretty productive and keeping like kind of staying positive as far as staying intact with my students and staying intact with the schools that I'm scheduled to have residencies with in the fall. And so, I'm hoping things still pan out. But again, it's like a lot of, we don't know what's going to happen after this. So, it really depends on how things kind of heal after this whole process is done.
Yeah, I saw both of your performances with ISOL art.
Oh, thanks.
Last couple of weeks. Both of them are really beautiful and really creative. It was nice to see your design talent, the like story of the mountains and the planes flying. So
yeah.
Yeah. How about you, Caleb? How are you feeling?
I feel good. Luckily, I am healthy, and so are my sort of immediate friends and family and loved ones.
Mm-hmm.
I have experienced some sort of, 2 degrees of separation loss from COVID,
Yeah.
or people I didn't know particularly well. But I think it's always worth remembering that whatever financial hardship that come from this, or whatever personal frustration or struggle is really a drop in the bucket compared to loss of life. Money can be made again, gigs can be rescheduled, hopefully momentum can be reclaimed, but the most important thing is that as many lives as possible can be saved. So I think it's sometimes hard to wrap your head around that when your sort of immediate surroundings or what's present most. But mostly I wake up every day and say, hey, I'm healthy, and we're all doing the right thing by our friends and neighbors, the ones we do know, the ones we don't know, and those who are most at risk, and those we don't even know are at risk. So that's been fine. Of course, like, yeah, everything's canceled. I think my company so far has had something like 15 engagements canceled. Probably like 9 of which were like, like things that we're going to employ the greatest amount of us and provide us all with money and things like that.
Yeah.
I made the difficult decision recently to furlough essentially my entire company, including my 2 administrative employees, including myself.
Wow.
Essentially just to run the company on low power mode, as I keep referring to it, as long as possible, so that we're not losing money as we're not making any money.
Yeah.
And that was a super difficult decision to make. But essentially, I do see myself just in a completely different mode. I live on the 4th floor of my apartment building. I cannot tap dance for all the obvious reasons. And to be honest, I haven't really felt compelled to dance. Dancing for me is a practice that is about sharing space with people and about community, and quite frequently about physical connection. And I think if I happen to live with another swing dancer, I would probably be dancing every day. But since I am not in proximity of another dancer that I feel like dancing with. I just haven't been in that space. So I've been using this time to read a lot. I've been reading a lot, and I've been practicing piano, which is its own form of dancing.
Yeah.
And to be honest, I've just been really laying low. I feel very privileged. You know, I don't have immediate financial concerns where like I don't know how I can buy groceries.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have immediate health concerns or emotional weight. So I'm sort of taking this time to lay low and be home in a way that I am usually not. I'm also cooking, which I'm quite bad at. So I think it's sort of an adventure every day just to learn how to do a new thing and get a little bit better at something.
Nice. Yeah, I think that's something that has been, I think there are two things that I think struck me is one is just learning to cook. Like I think in New York, we often just don't have the time or energy maybe to, or perhaps this kitchen space if you're living with roommates to like just live a healthy life and cook your own food and like take care of yourself the way you might if you're living in a smaller town. But also just how hard it is when there's something so serious going on to think of yourself in terms of the greater picture, in terms of being able to conceptualize like what you're doing, going out, going on walks, doing things like that, and how any time you're going out, like you're not just risking yourself, but you're risking other people, and what that means as a community-minded person. Like I think one of the great things is that we've figured out a lot of ways to stay connected. I think like on my street, for example, there's you all know about the 7 p.m. clapping, cheering thing for first responders. Like my street has gone to the like the nth degree. Like they've got two big speakers and they play New York, New York every single day. And they're all clanging their pots together. Like it feels like a huge celebration. And it reminds me of like the older videos of Italy when they would sing to each other from the windows. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's been really interesting to see, and really heartwarming also to see like the ways that we've been able to support each other, especially through Zoom and through these sorts of things. Yeah, very interesting to think about. Do you feel like you felt more or less connected now that this is happening? Because I think there's some people in some circumstances where people are starting to feel like they're calling people they haven't called before, or they're like these sorts of things. Like, how are you?
I actually feel more connected just because I've been talking to people more often that I usually don't talk to as often. Like even high school friends that I've known for like 30 years, I have talked to them more now than I have like in 1 year.
Amazing.
Weeks, we're always checking up on each other. My family calls, and I Zoom with them or I FaceTime with them. And, I feel like there's a sense of like wanting to connect with people a little bit more just because we're also separated. There's that need or like kind of just to even just make sure everybody's okay.
Yeah.
My roommates, text me every time see if I'm okay, and I ask them if they're fine. Because now that we're all separated, it's like all our stuff's like kind of just everywhere, like our schedule or even just like our routine. And so there's a lot of unknown, and so everybody like checks up on each other, which is really nice. And just as one of those things where you actually have time to talk to people. It's like when I was growing up, like I remember being on the phone for like 3 hours talking to somebody, and now it's like that you can just text somebody. That's it. That's all the conversations end up being. And so now that even with Zoom or even FaceTime, it's like conversations are a little bit longer, a little bit more frequent.
Nice. Yeah. I feel like I'm getting to know finally my roommates. I don't live with anyone I knew beforehand. And we all had very like chaotic schedules, and I feel like now I actually know something about them, who they are. It's really like a surprising result of this. Yeah. Yeah, very nice. Okay. How do you guys feel about moving into some of the more
juicy
Yeah, like, um, so we have some like prepared questions, and these can take us wherever we want to take them. Um, but why don't we start with, um, like now that we have a chance to, so part of the reason this idea for this show sort of came about is that I was in a Zoom rehearsal with my company, and we were talking about dance, and we were like discussing our feelings on composition and creation and all these things. And we realized that we just never really had time to talk about these things. We just had time to like get in rehearsal and then rehearse, and then we had to run off to the next thing or to our job or some other engagement that required our time. So one thing that I was really interested to hear from you both about is the trends that you're seeing in performance in the community, maybe nationally or locally, that you think that you've noticed, and maybe some of the best trends you think that are going on right now, or maybe some of the not so great trends that you're seeing, either in performance or in content, or like if there's like I know for me, I've noticed that in terms of lighting performance, like there's this very dark, I don't know if you guys have noticed this, but like there's a lot of not very brightly lit work that's starting to be made. Like I saw NDT at City Center in, what was it, February?
Mhm.
And the show was like a million hours long. So only got to see the first two pieces, and both of them were really dimly lit. And there's something about that speaks to like maybe the zeitgeist, like we're all feeling a little bit dark and a little bit cerebral, something like that. So I'm curious to hear if you have noticed anything. I don't know how often you guys get out to see performance even now, but
Just to respond to the first thing that you brought up, which is lighting. I mean, I've talked to a number of people about just how dark things are from a lighting perspective, but also just from a psychological perspective.
mm,
I think I think probably the most direct influence on dark lighting in dance, in live performance dance, is just that everything is being influenced by a cinematic perspective,
mm-hmm,
and things that are darker have more shadows and feel closer to a more cinematic experience.
mm-hmm. So you mean
And
cinematic in terms of like something that you'd see on the screen, or like in design? Yeah.
yeah, I think a lot of dance film is um, affecting how we experience live dance performance, and I think a lot of that has to do with lighting. Lighting, of course, and is very much at play in dance film, and
Mm,
I feel like that's probably the one of the reasons for that. You do hear audiences, particularly older audiences, say a lot, you know, that piece was too dark, I couldn't see anything. Uh,
mm,
so I think there's definitely some pushback, but also if it's someone's vision, you know, is what it is.
totally. Yeah.
In terms of best trends I've seen, I do feel like there's um, a sort of greater programming push and an artistic push to allow audience engagement, or some some way of making concert dance work uh, closer to a social or pedestrian or just community based experience.
What are some examples you've seen of that?
I think a lot of people are getting interested in partner dancing and incorporating it into contemporary dance work and concert dance work,
Mm,
uh, which I think is beautiful. I think to think about how vernacular dances and social dances affect uh, dance, quote, meant for the proscenium. There is no line between them, but I do think we often think about dances that are meant to be seen in some particular venue and dances that are meant to be seen in a different venue. And I think with more progressive programming, we're seeing a lot of those walls come down.
yeah.
You know, as someone who moved to New York with no sort of concert tap dance scene to that could be heralded as a sure thing. Just over the past decade, I've seen tap dance enter more concert dance spaces, and now it seems sort of like a given that Jacob's Pillow Dance Festival will program tap dance, or the Joyce will program tap dance, or City Center will program tap dance. But when I moved to New York, even just 10 years ago, that wasn't the case.
Interesting. Yeah. Do you think like there was a tip of the spear with, particularly with tap dance, or like someone you remember like?
Yeah, Michelle Dorance's company, Dorrance Dance, definitely was the 2010s breakout concert tap dance company. I mean, to be historically appropriate, she wasn't the first concert tap dance company. Jazz Tap Ensemble and American Tap Dance Orchestra works through the 80s and 90s, and even in the 2000s. Jason Samuel Smith, anybody can get it. There were people around, but I think if something doesn't happen in the dance scene every 5 or 10 years, people forget it ever happens at all.
It's very
unfortunately, our attention span or our memory of what's been done before goes very quickly. So all these things seem like new discoveries. That being said, I also think a lot of people who are responsible for providing opportunity recognize that these dance styles they sell tickets. I know that at Jacob's Pillow, the tap dance shows always sell out first. So there's incentive for them as well as for the creators who are interested in those styles.
Do you think that has to do with like the like family friendly like angle of it, or do you think like there's something that's tends to be very dark and cerebral about contemporary dance, like, or something that's very meant to be hard to get about a lot of other work, and I think tap dance having the sometimes the perspective of being like a little bit more about having fun and enjoying rhythm and just sort of being of the people maybe a bit more, or like of Broadway, which is again meant to be like a bit more mass appeal versus like maybe downtown dance, where things are perhaps meant not to be understood so well.
I don't know.
Maybe.
Maybe. I mean, because you said it, there must be some truth to it, right? Because if you put that logic together, then probably someone else did. I wouldn't support that reading of it, but I also I'm not the target audience for this question. I'm mostly just thinking, I think it's nice that that dance styles outside of the European classical vertical are being considered in larger institutional spaces, mostly because then there's funding involved.
Yeah.
For a lot of dance companies and dance artists who potentially were underfunded or undersupported, and then ultimately undervalued. That of course it can't be ignored that a lot of these dance forms that I'm talking about, social dance forms and vernacular dance forms and tap dance specifically, came from marginalized communities. So it's not like why do you think it wasn't in concert dance in a bigger way prior? There's a reason for it. So I think with a sort of greater push for social justice and intersectionality, in the dance scene, but also in pretty much every scene, we're seeing these ideas come to the forefront of programming, and I applaud it.
Yeah, totally agreed on that point for sure. How about you, Mike? What are you seeing that you like or that you don't like? Or
I do like some of the things that presenters or even like choreographers have been changing the way performance has been seen. I know the Ace Hotel has supported some dance performances in the lobby. And I can't remember who produces that, but I know there's those performances they have on Monday nights, I believe. And like I remember the Joyce Theater did the quadrille, which was like they changed the shape of the theater to make it in a round. So I like the direction for that. I was really happy they did that, just because it kind of changed the perspective of their programming. And so like with that setup in the theater, it just really, it got to be more personal rather than just being in the proscenium stage that way,
Yeah.
you know.
Definitely.
And I appreciate, you know, the choreographers or even the presenters trying to shift things a little bit so it doesn't feel so similar. Because you get the NDTs, you know, you get those pieces that are very dark and very dimly lit, I mean, that first piece that we saw back in this last concert was from 2013, so that's been a piece that's been around for a while.
Oh, yeah.
So I mean, just the programming was just set to be a little bit darker, but you know, but the trends these days, I think the things that are coming out more recently, I think more choreographers are willing to change things up and just make things a little bit more is cerebral as far as like how to view it, adding like technology and adding, you know, just the ways to view the piece itself. And I think I greatly appreciate those like that approach to things.
Yeah, I definitely think that there's a an element of like subconscious. I feel like I think I first noticed it with like Sleep No More and things like that, and then there's this trend of trying to do immersive art,
Yeah.
or creating immersive art, and I feel like something about the subconscious is very present in a lot of those things, like especially when they sort of like in the, I don't remember the name, but I think it was called The Room that NDT did. They sort of like broke down the walls and like moved the lighting equipment around and like showed you sort of the backstage area. Yeah, it felt very, very about the subconscious and about like a darker element of the subconscious, maybe.
Yeah. And I also agree with the whole cinematic thing, you know, that Caleb brought up. And it's very like, it's a totally different approach. It's very like appealing for people when it's very cinematic like that. And it's, if people could relate to it a little bit more. And they just feel a little bit more involved, I guess, is when they see certain pieces that are more cinematic. And it's certainly, you know, beautifully like done with the production itself.
Yeah.
But I think there's a greater connection with a broader audience when you think about it as in a cinematic point of view, just because they can relate it a little bit more and see it like something similar to where they would view it on a TV or a movie screen. Yeah. And when they see that, they feel more, it's more appealing to them personally. So they can kind of, it's more about how people absorb it, right? Yeah. If something is very impersonal, they just tend to look at it and see it as a nice piece of art, but they can't relate it to themselves as far as like what, you know, can be, how it could pertain to their own life. So when it's done cinematically, they see it and they're just like enthralled by like its beauty and like how the production and just like even the lighting, how it's done. And so they could, I feel like some people tend to relate better to it more.
Because it has this like, oh, I'm watching a film that I might watch at home, feel to it. And you do also a lot of, for anyone who doesn't know, I think we have a tight-knit community here right now, but Mike also does a lot of dance film that's masterfully done. It's very beautiful. Definitely check out his Instagram for that. Yeah, there's definitely this bigger trend. I think I would agree with that, especially when I think about promo reels for shows. Like I feel like even maybe like 6 or 7 years ago, there was just like sort of filming what happened on stage and selecting the like most interesting parts and like mushing them together. And now it feels like I'm watching a trailer. Yeah, a trailer for a movie. Yeah, that's really interesting. I wonder, so that really intrigues me about how perhaps we compose work as well. Like, do you feel like this element of movie making or like movie lighting or any of these things, do you feel like that affects any of your work? Or do you feel?
I think so, because I used to, I had this friend a while back and he read a lot of scripts for Hollywood. And so he would take class and he would talk about like all the scripts that he would get and like how he told me how the scripts are broken down in 3 acts and this and that. And like just the way like he explains it and how it's structured. It really makes sense of how the film is delivered or even like kind of just produced. And I think, sometimes approaching it that way as a dance maker really helps the piece, like especially if you're doing like a full length an evening work, and so you want to feel like it progresses somewhere. There's
Mhm.
its peak and its lull, and then it just kind of like where it finishes. So I think, it's certainly most people don't do the same, but like, to approach it that way really helps, just
Mhm.
so you can help under it's all about the psychological part of like you versus the dancer versus the audience.
Yeah.
And so if you can really think about it as a whole, you can really think about how to like even finesse the details of the show. So it's not necessarily about watching a piece and watching its dance, but like how do you want the audience to feel in in that particular time, even
Mhm.
the point where they enter and they exit. And so
Mhm.
it's really important of that whole experience. And so when you can plan that out, like planning out a movie, you can
Yeah.
really like help them understand things and help them emotionally like soak it into their cerebral kind of cortex.
Yeah. So break it down for me. Like when you mean like sort of like steward their emotions a little bit in the in the all elements, like what would that look like perhaps?
So I'm going to use a show that we did a couple of years ago at LaGuardia. So this
Uh,
is for the CUNY Dance Initiative, and so they gave us like the theater. So the theater was like humongous, and I'm
mhm.
like, I don't think we can fit that many people. We can't fill that space. And so they gave us like pretty much the reign for the theater. And so what we did was we used the backstage as the entrance. And so we created a small performance backstage. So as they enter, they already entered the space knowing what they're getting into.
Mhm.
So it's really preparing the audience to have that kind of emotional kind of impact. And so when they start the piece, they're already in that mindset. So they're not coming from a point where like, oh, I'm running to go to the theater. I'm going to get to my seat, read the program and so forth, and then start the show. So the show actually started from them going from the door all the way through their seats and then exiting to the point where they felt like they experienced something. So there's that sense of like, you're setting their minds up to receive the information that you're giving them, and
Mhm.
then from there giving them that impact, and then as they exit they can feel like they had experienced something the whole time. They were part of the performance and not necessarily like you know
Yeah.
separated from it.
Totally. I feel like that really reminds me of your work, Caleb, as well. Like, especially with bzzz. Um, but I feel like also when I watched More Forever, I felt like somehow I don't. I remember I watched it at the Guggenheim, and it was a while ago. But I felt like sort of entranced the entire time. Like, did you have like any of these thought? Like, where was the thought process in this, or the feelings maybe?
Um, Great questions. The thought process in both cases, they were actually made in the same span, although they're very different pieces.
Hmm.
Um, is to be very clear about what's happening, but
Hmm.
not to provoke a particular response. I think it's the thing that probably appeals to me most about certain ideas, choreographically or otherwise artistically, where we presented ideas in More Forever, or we tried them out in rehearsal, and if people saw them in multiple different ways, uh, it was more likely to stay than something that had a very clear oh, this is exactly what's happening idea. And it's not meant to explicitly confuse the audience in any way. That's not the goal. We're always trying to be very clear about what's happening, but in
Yeah.
terms of steering audience reaction, I mean, I've made pieces where I thought, oh, people will laugh at this, and then I've been completely wrong. And not that I don't have humor. I just didn't realize that it would have a more profound emotional impact, like a kind of something that I thought would be funny read as sad, and something that I thought would be sad would read as funny. And they're not binaries. But
Mhm.
then sometimes I am performing the same work, and one person thinks it's sad and one person thinks it's funny. And that is kind of the work I was hoping to make with those two pieces, a piece that has enough intrigue within it that the present moment and the audience's perspective is what dictates what the takeaway is.
Yeah.
So I have made pieces where I've said, this is really what I hope the audience will get from it. And then it's sort of just about making sure that you communicate your idea as clearly as possible, in a non-verbal form, which has its own challenge. But for those two pieces, I think I was just trying to present these ideas and allow people to deduce what they'd like. But the things that stayed are things that provoked some sort of emotional or intellectual reaction. It didn't even need to be a specific one, but just something that provoked a response. So I think maybe if you say you felt entranced, that's good, because it just means that the piece started and got you into a place where you wanted to think and feel, and then you decided what you thought and felt, as opposed to me deciding how I wanted you to think and feel, which is, it's sort of if there's a greater philosophical underpinning there, it's just a question of whether or not when we talk to people, we're hoping they'll respond in a certain way, or when we talk to people, we're hoping that we just communicate how we're feeling or what we're thinking, and we allow people to react as they wish, and then it's a conversation in that capacity. But
yeah,
it's complicated.
It's dance and art is awful in the complicated sector. It's interesting. It feels like like somehow a response to like how we're feeling, maybe to like, it just sparks something in my head, like when we think about like creating a full experience, like when the audience is coming in, or like trying not to dictate so much like what people should feel. It feels like I can map it pretty easily onto like the way that we think about power structures right now. Like I think in general, the dance community tends to be pretty progressive and pretty liberal, and I think something that's kind of important to us right now is like sort of removing hierarchical structures and like top-down ideations of like what it means to make art and what it means to hold like a position of high art versus like something else, or like the gateway of like entering or leaving something that is meant to be more deeply or more profoundly understood, and perhaps like leaving it as an open arena. Like when I'm having an experience, like I have my own experience, when I go to maybe when I go to see like Sleep No More, like it feels dictated in a lot of ways, but also it feels like it's my experience, and it feels like that space is left for me. And I feel like that's something that's like seems to be important in dance right now. Or maybe
I think Sleep No More is a great example of sort of what we were just discussing, something that doesn't necessarily give you a codified takeaway, but leaves you with an experience or a feeling or something to talk about that feels personal or individual. And I think as a lot of our work, the three of us, is in live performance. I don't do any dance film stuff. I'm super bad at it. But I think we are making live performance more cinematic as this word keeps coming back in sort of aesthetic ways. But I think also this is one of those moments where those of us involved in live performance are trying to figure out what is it about live performance that is still appealing, when or what is unique to the experience that can't be replicated from the most beautiful dance film ever made. What is it about being in the same space that begs being in the same space, as opposed to, spending the same amount of money on the live performance to make a really nice dance film and then putting it online for free so more people can see it at a lower price point.
That's very interesting. Yeah, like perhaps like why like especially with social media, especially with like coronavirus right now, like I've seen like 1.2 million dance videos come out from everybody, and a lot of them are really striking. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, Mike, what do you think?
There's like, I've seen a lot of companies like release a lot of their performances online.
Mm-hmm.
Like I finally got to see Crystal Fights with Truffenheim. So that was really
Ooh.
nice, right? But like, I don't know. There's just so many ways to gauge like live performances versus video versus like anything else as far as like interactive or versus proscenium. But like I think just the I think I just like the commitment from everybody as far as like how they're approaching their work, or just even the choreographic process.
Yeah.
That. But yeah, I just like the films that are coming out that everybody's doing while they're in quarantine. It's pretty cool what they can do with just the limited kind of resources.
Yeah, I think it's really beautiful too. I wanted to make sure we get a little bit of time to talk about this next question. So I had this question, which is there a conversation locally or globally in the dance world you wish was happening right now but isn't? Or on the flip side, are there conversations going on that you feel might be distracting to things we could or should be talking about? And I guess when I wrote this question, there was like an air of like maybe social or political or some other air, but I feel like our part of our job as artists is to like look at things a little bit differently. Yeah, so I guess there's a lot of ways to interpret like what this question might mean, like perhaps in the terms of like the conversation could mean like basically what we're having right now, like when we talk to our peers, when we talk to our dancers, or when we talk to you know, audiences or just anyone in general, like what do we feel like maybe might be the things that are like on everybody's mind subconsciously or not, that we aren't talking about yet, which is like a huge question now that I say it out loud. It sounds like such a like,
do you want to answer it first? Do you have a thought?
I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of things. I think one of the conversations right now that we're having that's really important to have is the role of gender and race and sexual orientation in the performing arts world and within the world at large, and what the barriers might be to participating, and what participation looks like, and what it looks like to hold the gates. And I think for me, part of the conversation means being there to listen as well. Like, and I think that's something that's a little bit easier now that we have a lot of access to information being spread everywhere, particularly through Instagram, Facebook, so on and so forth. Like we can just share these conversations. They don't stay so local. But there are like a ton of others. Like there before we got kind of wrapped up with Corona, I feel like the big question was like, where's art funding going? Especially now that we have an administration that is really not favorable to the art world. Yeah, I feel like there's a lot going on. But if there is, I think part of the question is like, is there something that's on your minds or has been on your mind that you have been percolating on maybe, or thinking about? He said with a big like ... at the end of that sentence.
Yeah.
Or if you feel like, you know, I don't know. It's a big question. So like,
I can give this a go for a bit.
Sure, yeah.
Stop me when you've heard enough. But I think the conversations that are specific to our scene, our industry, our worlds, what have you, are the same conversations they're being had everywhere. I mean, there's the phrase, you know, think global, act local. So I think you know, questions of gender and race and sexual orientation are global conversations looking for greater equality in hiring practices, in leadership positions, in pay gaps, which miraculously is still an issue in dance with gender. But I think then the question is, you know, what can we do in our scene, in our industry, that is as these issues are as persistent as anywhere. I think we potentially, because we're a relatively progressive industry, deal less with sort of workplace harassment or social inequality, but there's still sort of greater underpinnings of inequality that permeate our scene as well. The biggest one I can think of is wealth disparity, which affects all of us.
Totally.
You know, none of us can make enough money without sort of charitable giving being involved in our dance practices if we're working in a nonprofit dance sector. Endowments are a big part of it, but to be honest, a lot of dance companies are powered by charitable giving, meaning people who have a lot giving a little to people that don't have enough to do their work. And this is something that is happening more in America because we're in a sort of a freer market. A lot of arts work in Europe is government funded, and most government funded art in America goes to much larger companies who sort of have the administrative heft to get those endowments and to become a proper nonprofit and to sort of like to push that effort around. So I think the things that we're talking about are of course social, but I think, to be honest, to say that what we're experiencing is above and beyond what anyone else experiencing sort of diminishes the fact that they're still half of our country, including probably most of us dance artists, live paycheck to paycheck. A majority of our country is food insecure, and a majority of our country still struggles with healthcare. So I feel like the struggle within our scene should be connected to sort of greater struggles of essential care. I'm a Medicare for All fan. I think wealth disparity should be addressed in a regulatory way, not in a we should convince wealthy people to give money to the arts because it's a good moral thing to do. I think there should be some greater regulatory practice so that sort of wealth disparity isn't up to those with wealth to decide whether or not they want to give their money away and where. And I think, of course, we should be continuing to fight for social justice. But in terms of what actions we can do, I think it's about making sure that our systems are less hierarchical, that our hiring practices are more equitable, and that essentially we pay the people who are working as much as they are, as much as possible.
Very fair. Yeah. How do you feel about this, Mike? Yeah, go ahead.
I come from like a really old school because when I first started had the company, I was still working full time, so I really did a lot of self-producing and kind of just earning the money for myself to pay the dancers. Paying theater, paying for everything, costumes, lighting, designer, everything. And so not till I moved to New York, where there was a sense of more support in that sense. And I think that's why I kind of left LA in that degree, because I felt like there was less support in LA, which is still kind of a thing there.
Yeah.
But it's for me, I'm still kind of in that old school mentality where I kind of raise my own stuff to produce the work itself. Unfortunately, we've had a lot of support through even LaGuardia. That relationship that we've had through LaGuardia, through the Queenie Dance Initiative, has really been helpful. They've produced us 5 times now, so which is really, really nice. And then we've had residencies in San Jose, in Connecticut, in Vermont, and so a lot of those things are used for the company for our projects over the year. And so even for our October show, this is our first time we've had a full evening for just ourselves.
Oh, wow.
Most of it's done through residencies and through the partnerships with schools, or even just mostly actually through residencies. So that's how we've been like kind of operating. And certainly we're not like operating throughout the whole year. So there's certain times where it's just you're just touring with 2 people, 4 people, and then producing stuff. But like for the most part, it's through funding through the schools and for us, and that's just through our personal experience.
Yeah, the issue of, I think it's very telling that both of you mentioned like just the fact of our capacity to fund the work that we do. Yeah, it's super important and very hard to think about, because I think arts in general tends to be, I mean, the way I think about it is like a lot of the market in the United States is commodity based. Like you make a thing and then you sell that thing, and you make a lot of that thing and you sell a lot of those things and you get money. And it's really difficult to sort of like produce art, produce like a live dance concert, and then sell it at scale. You know what I mean? Like, which is I think why we end up being in this this position of sort of looking for governmental or donor support in order to get things done, which I think is something that I think is very interesting that you brought up, Caleb, is that supporting the arts should be a regulatory process, or could be at least, like in a very positive way, like the way Europe does. And I wonder what the steps would be. I mean, who knows? I'm like I don't think any of us are involved in politics and like over like a policy making way, but like, I would just love to see. I think that's one of my dreams, is like being in a country that just values the arts as much as they consciously, I think, as much as they do subconsciously, because we have such an entertainment and art based country and economy as well. Like I can think of like very few sectors of the economy that don't have something to do with the arts in some way, like either through promotion or through presentation or something like that. Something you mentioned, Caleb, that I think is that I like to dig into is underrepresentation, and I'm interested to hear what you guys have to say about, if you know of any, or who comes to mind when you think of somebody maybe who's making work right now who you feel is underrepresented, or perhaps is like doesn't get the like, who you think is perhaps like a really great artist, or is making work that you think is like overlooked, or that you're really excited about. If there are people you see their work and you're like, they're amazing, and you see them maybe once a year or something like this. I feel like I see these people all the time in like smaller festivals that like build in like maybe 10 artists at a time, and you see like just like a smattering of work, and there are some of those artists in there who I personally would love to see more of, to gain more support, to gain more notoriety. But I'm wondering like who you're watching, who you think is like maybe not seen as much or not as supported as much as you would like to see them, like the peers in our field.
I mean, the dancers I watch most frequently are a lot of them are working outside of concert dance. My probably my favorite dancer to watch right now is a Chicago footwork dancer named King Charles. He's incredible, but the majority of his work is making videos for the internet and teaching on sort of the international and national festival scene for people who are interested in footwork. You know, much like swing dance or tap dance or any sort of dance idiom. He flies somewhere, he teaches a class to like 50 people, gets paid money and goes home. I don't know what his his presentation practices, but he's not touring to the Joyce this year or anything like that.
Right.
But I feel like he's probably the person I'm most interested in watching for the most extended period of time.
Yeah.
And sort of the creation global footworking scene in Chicago that's come out of that, like done that a little bit, Jackson. And then I'm actually interested in a lot of percussive dancers who work in traditional music idioms. There's an English clog dancer named Sam Jones, Sam Step Jones. And there's like my favorite percussive dancer of all time, Nick Garris, who's based in Michigan.
Okay.
Both of these artists are in, more rural areas, so they just aren't presented as much because they're not, located near like urban centers with performing arts facilities. But these are the folks that I'm sort of most excited about as dance makers, and a lot of it has to do with them coming from or contributing to vernacular dance forms with their own sort of individual practice.
Yeah. And so for those of us who don't know, including me, when you say footwork dance, what is the...
Chicago footworking is essentially like a super fast footwork based dance form. There's a style of music that's from Chicago that is meant for the dance, and it sort of was first done in these sort of battle scenarios on the South Side, and definitely came from the African American community in Chicago, and now has expanded. It's everywhere. It's everyone.
Kind of like breaking in hip hop.
Say again?
Like breaking in hip hop?
Like everything, to be honest. Like Lindy Hop, like tap. It starts in the same place and goes out there. But yeah, footworking is beautiful. I encourage you to look it up.
Yeah. I'll definitely put that on my YouTube playlist for next time. How about you, Mike?
Not necessarily like a particular person, but like an organization that's out in LA that's really doing. Her name is Kate Hutter, and their company is LA Contemporary Dance, and so she just created this organization called Stomping Grounds, which is out in Alameda, and we're working with them to do this show that we're doing in October.
Yeah.
So the LA side is actually performing over there. But like she started this organization called Stomping Grounds, and it's literally this whole kind of block of space. And she's trying to create something new for the LA scene, which is really nice for them, at least, because LA is so disparate as far as like how everybody gathers, right? Yeah. And so she's trying to create this organization where she can create residencies and time for play and time for people to really create stuff. And they're really supporting a lot of artists and asking them what the organization could offer for them. So it's not necessarily like, oh, we want to do this and can we? It's more of them asking like, what could we do for you in order to make that happen for yourself, including cost, including equipment, including everything. So they're trying to bring in this community to really to garnish work, and not necessarily dance, but like performance art, everything. And so I really appreciate that step forward for them. I'm hoping to really like kind of have that conversation with them to kind of elaborate on certain things, but like their space is like growing, and I'm hoping it's gonna get through this whole COVID thing.
Yeah.
But like, and I think she has a great like vision for all of it, but like I think she's creating a model that really could be nice to follow afterwards for everybody. Nice. Which is a nice like kind of hub, a nice center for dance, performance, everything. And I'm hoping to kind of stick around with her and just to kind of get that going and help them out.
It's beautiful. Yeah, it feels like reminds me of what Gina Gibney's trying to do here with Gibney Dance, like really just trying to hit all of the things. Yeah.
I also, there are two more companies I want to shout out.
Sure.
One is a long-standing company that has supported, like essentially youth dance education, and the other is a newer company to support youth dance education. The first one you may have heard of is called Dancing Classrooms. Dancing Classrooms supports the teaching of social partner dance in the New York City public school system. There was a super cute documentary about it called Mad Hot Ballroom. And it's not like we see a lot of people coming out of that program who become professional ballroom dancers or anything like that. But I don't think we could ever diminish like the sort of impact on our city that a program that goes into the schools and teaches young people how to partner dance does. It does so much for it does so much for the people involved. So that's the first one. And then the second one is a newer one, which is Nigel Campbell and Chanel Da Silva's program, Move NYC. I've been following their program for years, and I contribute here and there for like benefit things. And like the students coming out of their training program are the best young dancers I've seen entering the like sort of pre-professional contemporary dance scene in New York. And that program is brand new, it's like maybe 4 or 5 years old, and they're already like all their kids go to all the fancy schools. So, I think if given another 5 to 10 to 20 years, they'll take over.
Amazing. Yeah. I remember when they started, I was still working in Gibney at that time, and it was like it's just like a flood of young people in all of the hallways. And I think a lot of Gibney was still under construction at the time. So it was a lot of chaos, but it was like such a beautiful, energetic thing to see. Cool. So we're getting on in time a little bit. So I just wanted to say to our dedicated panelists, or not panelists, to our dedicated attendees, if you look at the bottom of your screen, there's a little Q&A button that you can click. And if you want to ask a question of anyone or pose a question to the group, you are totally welcome to do so. And in about maybe 10 minutes or so, we'll take a look at those. And if there are no questions, then we'll deal with that if it comes. But so feel free to add a question or two if you'd like. And then I want to just spend this last little bit of time giving you guys a chance to talk about your upcoming work. Solstice for you, Mike, and then 2020 for you, Caleb. Yeah, you want to head it off, Mike?
Yeah, sure. So I've been working on this piece for like a year now, just separately with the New York company and the LA company. And so this year is our 50th anniversary. So instead of bringing people together, so instead of bringing people together, I'm just trying to find a new model to find connection. It's funny that this is all happening with Zoom and like all these like internet kind of connectivity with everybody, and so we're trying to figure things out as far as how to make things work, but we're planning on stuff. So again, this is like my time to do all the planning. So by the time we get back, we get into things. But we got the venue set. We're trying to work on the projections and the panels and just the setting. Yeah, I'm writing all the music. What was that?
Right, just give us a quick breakdown of like what is Solstice.
So Solstice is a cross-platform performance between two locations. So one's going to be in New York and one's going to be in LA. So essentially, it's going to be two different pieces viewed in two different locations. But when it's viewed together, it should look like one piece.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so it's not like a replication of one piece in two sides. So it's one piece in LA, one piece in LA. When they're put together, they're a completely different piece.
Interesting. Yeah. Okay. And then go ahead. You were talking about all the other stuff.
Oh yeah, so we're just like trying to get all the projections and all the things together. I'm writing all the music, doing all the lights. It's a full production. So
you write music as well.
I do. I played trumpet for like years.
Amazing.
I was actually a music major first.
Oh, cool. Right. And you did a color guard as well, right?
Yeah, I did all that.
Yeah.
I did that. I was a jazz musician for a while. And then I ended up switching to graphic design, so I became more of a computer nerd.
Nice. Amazing.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. Well, we'll look out for it. We'll plug you for sure.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. And then Caleb, you're doing Swing 2020, hopefully. Fingers crossed that things happen.
Fingers crossed. So Swing 2020 is a project I'm directing that's being produced by George Theater Productions, and it's scheduled currently for a 2-week premiere at the Joyce Theater in August. The show is a big swing dance show. It has 12 swing dancers and has a 10-piece big band. I guess when we think about swing dance, we think of it as, you know, super showbiz, super glitzy, like super ooh and ah and cheeseball. And by we, that's not how I see swing dance, but that's how I think a lot of people see swing dance. And the show is meant to be, is called Swing 2020 because it is swing dancing, specifically Lindy Hop, as it exists in 2020. A lot of shows that use vernacular jazz or Lindy Hop are set in a previous time period because that's the sort of aesthetic that is associated with Lindy Hop. And of course, you know, that doesn't have to be the case. Big band music is still being performed and written, and swing dancing is still being done. So there will be no bowlers or fedoras or suspenders or spats. And it's meant to be a present day sort of staged manifestation of the social dance scene that exists. So it's about people in the presence who swing dance, who do it in 2020, where things have changed and things have progressed and things are just, you know, swing dance in the presence. That being said, it's just a big show with a lot of parts to it. Kind of hard to describe, but that's why I made a show.
Nice.
As opposed to writing an essay.
Great. Amazing. And then secret fact is that I actually met Caleb as a swing dancer before I met Caleb in any other facility. That's actually how I started dancing, is Lindy Hop and swing dancing.
Cool.
So it's really cool to see it on the stage for me. Even though I don't do it quite as much as I would like to, I still count myself as a Lindy Hopper in New York City. Great. I don't see any Q&A questions from anyone, which is fine. We don't need any. Do you guys have anything else you want to add before we wrap things up? Or, yeah.
Okay. We're actually gonna try to do a live performance in a couple of weeks.
Oh yeah?
Yeah.
Oh,
So
what?
we're gonna do a live stream of everybody from all over the country for the company.
Oh,
so
nice.
we'll do like it's a live broadcast, basically, live editing, live everything. So.
Oh wow.
So we're gonna try something new.
Very cool.
For us, at least, new for us.
And we can just go to your Instagram to figure out when it's happening.
Yeah. So we'll make an announcement later this week. Yeah, I'm currently writing all the scripts and all the tasks for everybody, and so I'll be live editing it while everybody's watching it. So we'll see.
That's so cool. Amazing. Yeah. Looking forward to seeing it.
Mixed media.
Mixed media. That's what it's all about. Cool. All right. Well, it sounds like we should wrap things up. Thank you both so much for coming. I hope that you had a good time, and I hope that all of our attendees had a good viewing session. Hi, Arya. How are you? Great. Thank you for coming. Share this with people in the world. If you want to see them next week, we'll have Danny Cole and Andrea Ward, who are two female choreographers and art makers in the scene. And we'll have more information about them soon. Thank you guys again so much for coming.
Thank you.
Yeah. See you soon. Bye.
Bye, guys.